SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
I trust that you fared the storms okay. It wasn't too bad here in central Mississippi, but our fellow Mississippians to our south had a rough time with some brutal storms, long track tornadoes that moved through, especially Tylertown, Walthall County. The latest I saw, 42 dead in the storms that swept across the country. I think Missouri.
In total, yeah.
In total, right. Missouri had the most with 12, 4 in Oklahoma, 8 in Kansas, 6 in the Magnolia State, 2 in North Carolina, 4 in Texas. That's according to NBC News. Man.
Yeah, with the Friday night reports of tornadic activity in the Delta and then tornadoes all throughout southeast Mississippi on Saturday, I believe the official tally is up to 12 official tornadoes.
Yeah.
I've seen meteorologists tallying up what they saw on the radar over the weekend, and I've seen between 29 and 32 total in Mississippi alone.
Good grief. Well, the conditions were ripe. You know, I will have to say that a lot of times we're sort of critical of the Weather Service and being inaccurate. But you know what? They called this one pretty accurately, did they not? If you were watching the forecast in the bands of where they expected and the time, the worst weather to occur, and it adjusts, of course, as the fronts approach. Things change. Atmospheric conditions change. It ain't perfect. It's nature. And all those fancy computer models, they're pretty sophisticated, and that technology's come a long way, no doubt. But I was just a bit struck on how accurate they turned out to be, because that is the area in Mississippi that bared the worst of the passing storms is exactly what they forecast. Nonetheless, we are saddened at the loss of life and property damage to those in the state of Mississippi. Our hearts and prayers go out to their families for sure. And also, we would be remiss if we didn't thank the army of emergency responders that always heed the call. So sorry about that. Really am. And great weather today. But you know that we're not out of the woods with respect to the possibility of more spring storms as things heat up, cold fronts come through, clash of air masses, boom, storms. That's what it looks like. Wow. And these long track tornadoes, man, that's incredible, is it not? Just don't remember anything like that. I mean, it's happened before. The one that I guess is most vivid in my memory, I was around in 1966. I believe it was 66, the F5 tornado that swept through South Jackson. Now, we didn't have nearly the sort of sophisticated forecasting technology that we do today. Was it 66, Rhino? You look at that? Yeah, all right. Candlestick Park. I'll never forget that. And that was in early March, I believe, was the date.
Yeah, March 3rd.
March 3rd, okay. And that thing swept through, and I believe it was a long track. And 58 from that one storm, I believe, lost their lives, including many in South Jackson in Mississippi, Candlestick Park, there on Cooper Road, not far from Forest Hill area, Forest Hill High School and so forth. I remember that one. It also took WLBT, the NBC affiliate, took them off the air for quite some time, blew the tower down there. And they had to reconstruct the tower, downtown Jackson, at the time. And the other thing I remember is one of the construction workers sadly lost their life as part of the construction process. That thing was off the air for 2-3 months, I think, while the tower was being rebuilt. Man, oh man. Well, over the weekend, a whole bunch of news for you that we got to get to. Let's start with this morning. Retail sales increased 0.2%, spending up less than expected. And that's got the Dow up today and the NASDAQ down. Investors don't know quite what to make of it. We had a good day on the markets Friday, and that was driven by political events. Specifically, we got a bill to keep the government open, a continuing resolution. I had a bit of a Linda Blair moment there, if you folks understand what I mean, metaphorically. She, of course, the actress in the 1970s thriller The Exorcist. And who could forget pretty powerful special effects technology for the time, wouldn't you say, Rhino, that showed her head spinning around is what I'm referring to. And I felt like that with respect to Chuck Schumer there, the Senate minority leader in the U.S. Senate. It was Wednesday. He said, yep, we're against this spending bill. And then he all of a sudden pivoted. And by Friday, he and 8 other Democrats and 1 independent, that'd be Senator Angus King from Maine, joined together to end the filibuster. That was a procedural vote to essentially invoke cloture, which allows then the legislation, the way the procedure works, the process works, you get through the filibuster, and then the legislation can pass with a simple majority, and it did. 54-46, 1 Republican voting in the nay column. That would be Senator Rand Paul. But Schumer and his fellow Democratic senator from the great state of New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, also voted to end the filibuster. And then both senators from New Hampshire voted. So, we got a suspending deal. The president signed it into law.
I haven't gone back to check, but I'm guessing the Democrats that they were able to, hey, you got to go vote for this, were the ones that had the least amount of public discourse where they considered the filibuster racist and a bastion of Jim Crow and all these other evil things they were espousing to the filibuster just a few short months ago.
And is that not, as you like to point out, if it weren't for double standards, the Democrats would have none. But is that not just so, I'd say kind of maddening, honestly. Maybe I shouldn't get mad about it, but it's disturbing in that, oh, wait, when Joe Biden is in office and you got control, then the Republicans who look at and are strongly considering not continuing, not voting to continue spending, and thus shutting the government down to call some attention to the radical, irresponsible amount of money going out the door that's producing deficits. Well, you're just villains. You're the devil. You're subhuman. And all the grandstanding, it's just crazy. And then all of a sudden, when the shoe's on the other foot, it's unbelievable. It truly is ridiculous. And I think that Americans in general, they're just sick of it. They're sick of the game playing. 62-38, that was the vote to clear the filibuster.
Well, what's disturbing is not that the politicians are slimy. Politicians have been slimy as long as politicians have been politicians. What's disturbing is there's a sizable portion of the population that is stupid enough to buy the lies that they are spoon-fed by the dummy Democrats.
I also want to point out, with respect to your point, how they will often give cover, right? Hey, this is what we want to do, and you've got cover because you come from a state, in this case in the Senate, a state that if you vote this way, it's not going to hurt you. Or you're out, you're retiring. And that's exactly what happened. It was Shaheen from New Hampshire who announced her retirement last week. She voted with Angus King, the independent, to pass this thing. That's the games that get played in Washington. Coming right back, Dr. Dan Edney at 11:05.
Mississippi.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
So just looking through the 10, Rhino, that voted with Republicans to overcome the filibuster, which started, of course, with Chuck Schumer and as we said, his New York Senate colleague, Kirsten Gillibrand, joined in with him. And then both senators from New Hampshire. Now, why in New Hampshire? First, Jeanne Shaheen says, I'm out of here, not running again in 26. The other, Maggie Hassan, she also joined Jeanne Shaheen. So I found that interesting that of the 10 who voted to end the filibuster, we're talking about 10 Democrats. Again, one of those, Angus King, an independent, but let's be honest, he, for the most part, caucuses with the Democrats. What?
That's like Bernie Sanders is technically independent.
That's because we don't have a communist party that could get him elected. You know how they always put the name of the elected official and right behind that, in parentheses, DR hyphen, and then the abbreviation for the state? We need one for M, Marxist, C, communist, for Sanders and the others of his ilk, shall we say. Oh, gosh. But, so you got, of the 10, 2 states represent 4, that being New York and Maine. Jeanne Shaheen says, yeah, I'm out of here. I think Gillibrand feels safe because she just joins in with the minority leader in the state of New York. And then you've got Gary Peters. Are you shocked at that one? No, because where's he from? Michigan. And what has he announced? He ain't running again. It's exactly, Rhino, what I've said so many times on the program, that I'm all for the term limit deal, but just keep in mind, when they know they're terming out, they're not coming back, they don't care what you think, we the people. They just don't care. Their vote. Now, in this case, you may be happy about their vote, but I can assure you there's a whole bunch of people in Michigan that are mad at Peters because of his vote. Who else was it? Was it Capito, I believe, in Nevada, was among those as well? That voted against this or to clear the filibuster. There was 10 of them. Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada. Brian Schatz of Hawaii. I will admit, that one kind of shocked me. Fetterman of Pennsylvania, I was shocked as well that he held to his word. Weren't you a little concerned about that? But he turns out he did.
It's the first time he's actually gone through with it.
Yeah. So, now, how long has he been there? A year? 2 years?
Yeah, a year and a half.
Keep that in mind as well, folks. They know they got 5 years left in the Senate, and they're a little more frisky, shall we say, early on. But we got us a bill. This continues Biden-era spending through.
It didn't help that Kyrsten Sinema was roasting him on social media.
Oh, man. Is she having the last laugh? Why? Because, folks, she, the Democrat senator, former from Arizona, that along with Joe Manchin from West Virginia, honestly saved the dang country to a great extent because they blocked ending of the filibuster during the Biden term, which would have unclogged the logjam in the U.S. Senate that would have allowed the entire Biden agenda to get through. And as much as you may feel that Biden ruined the country with his policies, and I'm with you, man, what he could have done without the filibuster, starting with something you and I talked about many times, their HB1, or was it HR1? I don't remember. Nonetheless, it was their highest priority measure that would have totally federalized elections in this country. That was their top priority. That shows you right there that they're not about doing what's in the best interest for the people. They're interested in doing what's in the best interest of them. Not that you're surprised or anybody out there tuned in to us. They know that. That was their top priority. But all the Trump tax agenda, boom, we would not have been existing over the last 4 years under the Trump tax cuts because they didn't have what was necessary in the Senate to undo those. We would have had the Biden tax proposals, which would have devastated the American economy. And all the other cultural woke crap as well, that would have just flowed right through. Abortion. We would have codified the right to an abortion. We would have had completely open borders. It's good just to kind of remember where these people stand and what their priorities and their agenda are, because it was Sinema who, as Rhino points out, what was she saying, Rhino? She was lambasting him on this filibuster deal.
Oh, yeah, from Saturday. Literally 0 Senate Democrats support the filibuster. 38 voted to filibuster the continuing resolution yesterday. 8 who previously voted to eliminate the filibuster on 1/19 of 2022 did not filibuster. 1 who previously campaigned against the filibuster did not filibuster.
She took him to task. Good for her. And thank you. Even though I didn't agree with the senator a great deal, she did at least have the good common sense wisdom to say, no, this is be bad. She knew that if she'd have voted in the affirmative, because that's when we had 50-50, and the vice president, oh my gosh, Kamala Harris could have broken the tie in the filibuster, boom, the entire Biden agenda goes through. Would have required us all to join labor unions. Remember, that was legislation as well. They wanted to unionize the entire American workforce. Totally open borders, as we talked about, crazy taxes and ridiculous spending, socialization of health care. I know old Thompson Greenwood already thinks we have socialized medicine. You ain't seen nothing yet, buddy, until the Democrats get what they want, which would truly be socialized medicine, and that every medical professional in the country would work for the dang government. How's that working out, by the way, in England and Spain and other countries that have implemented such programs? It's not working out too well, is it?
Well, in Canada, if you have certain terminal illnesses, they do offer assisted suicide.
That's true.
Because that's a lot cheaper than the treatment.
Yep. Man, oh man. So that's where we are with respect to spending, the economy. Now, all right, Republicans in the House, get to work. They're off this week.
Of course they are.
Get to work and start hammering out 12 appropriations bills through the regular order
We put
process.
off all our normal work until the last minute and crammed it all in a weekend, just like those group projects from college. Oh, we better reward ourselves with a week off. We're the hardest working people in D.C. And you wonder why Congress has such low approval ratings.
Speaking of low approval ratings, what about the Democrats' approval rating?
Circling the drain.
Was it like 22% or something like that? Did I get that right?
Because they refuse to remove their head from their own hind ends.
Let's see. I'm looking for the latest. Yeah, here we go. Even CNN, they're shocked at it as well. The Daily Caller, Rhino, reports this, and they're reporting from a CNN poll, 29% favorability rating. But my favorite part of this article is that they've got a photo of all the Karens. That's what they all look like. Democrats at Mr. Trump's speech a couple of weeks ago. And they all got the signs up, and they got those scowls on their face. They're just unhappy people. Let's see, is it? Yeah, it's Rashida Tlaib. She's got her little portable grease board. That's a lie. Oh my gosh! Save Medicaid. Musk lies. False. Oh God! And they all got that scowl on their face. That's what's just so sickening. They're just unhappy people, aren't they? They can't laugh, can't be happy about anything, especially when it comes to Donald Trump and the Republicans. Now, this is, I think, an interesting take on Americans and American voters, etc. Mr. Trump has a high approval rating, the highest in his presidency, but it's still below 50. It's 47%. 47. But that's the highest in his presidency. I think what it illustrates is just how polarized this country is, man. We're just split right down the dang middle. But still, his approval rating is 18 points better than the Democrats collectively, which tells you just how far the Democrats have fallen. Not that they had much room to fall, but that's really fascinating to me to look at these polls. When we come back, we got to talk about the last couple of weeks left in the Mississippi legislative session. Well, there's a little volley on social media happening between the governor and the lieutenant governor and the speaker.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
They come from the cities and they come from the smaller towns. Beat up cars with guitars and drummers go crack, boom, bam.
Well, top of the morning to you. It is St. Patty's Day here, Rhino. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wore green because I got tired of just having to explain the green and orange thing.
So I got some St. Patty's Day trivia for you before I dig into what's happening in the state legislature.
What you got?
In which Irish city will you find the Blarney Stone?
First one that popped in my head was Kilkenny. I don't think that's right, though.
Well, it's a city I've never heard of. Cork. C-O-R-K. This is an easy one here. How many leaves does a typical clover plant have?
That would be 3.
Yeah. I don't even consider this trivia in this list I'm looking at. 4-leaf clovers are considered what? Surely most people know that. Answer, good luck. Oh, appreciate that. Now here's a good one for you that I remember because I'm old enough to remember. What Irish band had a Billboard Top 10 hit with the 1968 song. See, I told you you weren't around yet. The Unicorn. What was the name of that band? We need to cue that one up, by the way. And the band was the Irish Rovers, and they sung it in the oh-so-familiar Irish brogue. What traditional Irish dish combines mashed potatoes and cabbage? I never even heard of this before. You know? Do you know?
Mashed potatoes and cabbage?
Yeah, I knew that was an Irish dish. I just didn't know what the name of the dish in Irish parlance is. Colcannon, Colcannon. You're going to find the unicorn for us? Oh, my gosh. Who is the current president of Ireland? I have no reason to know that. It's Michael D. Higgins. How about this one? I don't know if I can pronounce this word correctly. On what instrument do you play Piobaird? Piobareachd. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's the bagpipe. Okay. Oh, well. Little Irish trivia for you there. So, the social media folks there in the Speaker of the House's office, I'm assuming it's the social media folks, and also in the Lieutenant Governor's office, they engaged in a little bit of banter, shall we say, over the weekend. And it's pretty clear that they don't agree on some of the major issues. It started out with the Speaker somewhat scolding the Senate, saying no need to send a milquetoast, very lame Senate education agenda back to the House. It's not even worthy of discussion. Not even anything that should be reported. It was reported in the Magnolia Tribune. We showed the Senate what Mississippi's education future looks like. Again, this is Speaker of the House Jason White with the House bills, and they wholeheartedly rejected them without so much as a whisper. Mississippians are beginning to take notice of the Lieutenant Governor and his Senate leaders doing the bidding of the status quo. It's not just the status quo. They're doing the bidding of some really, is rabid too strong a word there, Rhino, to describe the education establishment that essentially blocks education freedom in this state?
I think that's a nicer word than I would use.
Okay. Somebody will have to answer to it sooner or later. The Speaker goes on to write and end his post with hashtag let me check with Nancy, referring to Nancy Loom of such an organization that represents the education establishment, the Parents Campaign. She is a very strong opponent, vocal opponent of education choice. And it has, I think, a strong working relationship with the Lieutenant Governor. Has influenced him in that way to some extent. Honestly, I think he is, on a legacy basis, has been an opponent of education choice. So, the Lieutenant Governor responded with, true leadership is addressing the state's $25 billion debt to pay our employees and retirees their promised PERS benefits, which the Speaker has killed and continues to ignore. The Senate is committed, to fixing PERS is the House. Wow. So after that, just continuing on with the exchange, Speaker of the House Jason White. I'm not a tax lawyer like you. I'm a country lawyer from a small town, but here's what I do know about PERS. My wife is a PERS retiree. Both of my parents were lifelong educators in Mississippi's public schools and our outstanding community college system. They are both PERS retirees. I really don't need a late afternoon tweet on PERS or leadership from you. Trust me, I've got real-world examples of the importance of both from those mentioned above. True leadership is solving the stability of PERS, which is why the funding of our state's retirement system is directly addressed in the House tax plan. Which part of the Senate tax plan addresses dedicated funding to PERS? No one denies we've got a $25 billion deficit currently with PERS. No one denies we have to stop digging the hole. No one denies we owe it to our retirees and employees to honor the benefits promised. What Mississippians, including House of Representatives members, are concerned about is your lack of leadership to address the money side of the problem. You refuse to engage in a dedicated stream of revenue directly to PERS. You have in your Senate a House bill that directly addresses the money, in all caps, side of the PERS problem by dedicating $100 million annually of the state's share of lottery proceeds directly to PERS, directly in PERS, of course, in all caps. It's called House Bill 1. Look it up this weekend. I'll clue you in. It's in Section 11. Whew! There you go, folks. A little dust-up between the respective leaders of the chambers there down at the Capitol, the Speaker of the House, and the Lieutenant Governor. Now, in fairness, because we try to be objective here and we want you to have all the information, the Senate did introduce a couple of bills, Senator Daniel Sparks running point on these, that would have introduced a new tier into PERS, Tier 5. Essentially, it changes the retirement program for all new public sector employees rather than it being the current Tier 4 full defined benefit program, which are just more than not bad designs. Your benefits continue no matter how much you paid in. Doesn't matter. As long as you live, you keep getting benefits. Just like Social Security, just like Medicare. That's why they're both broke. $73 trillion, the unfunded liability in Social Security and Medicare. So they did introduce legislation to do that, and then there was another bill that would have changed the optional retirement plan available to members of IHL, which needs some work, no doubt. And that didn't pass in the Senate. Now, in the House, pardon me. Passed the Senate, didn't pass in the House. So, to be clear, the Speaker's right. This doesn't provide, quote, a dedicated stream of revenue to PERS like HB 1, the House's tax bill, would, $100 million a year from the lottery proceeds directly to the PERS fund. Rather, it approaches it in a different way by creating this new tier that would take some of the pressure off of PERS, but it's not a solution unto itself, just to be clear. Now, it wouldn't provide direct revenue into the program, but it would mean the amount taxpayers fund for all new retirees would decrease because we're not funding a full, dedicated, defined benefit program like we currently are. So you're kind of working at the edges here of addressing the PERS problem. What it really needs, honestly, is all the above. If you study the actuarial analyses, you need an infusion of cash, you need an increase in the contribution rate, and certainly creating this new tier which would reduce the pressure, lower the pressure on the PERS program. All of that would figure in, no doubt. So the Lieutenant Governor's made it clear that he's not prepared to even really talk seriously about tax cuts and elimination of the income tax until the situation with PERS is addressed. The House would say, well, we did address it. We're giving it $100 million. Wow. So what does this mean at the end of the day for this particular session? What results might we see with time running out? I think it means we're not going to get anything. That's what I'm thinking now. That's just pure speculation on my part. But no doubt lawmakers are at odds at the highest levels on how to address PERS and what to do about taxes, if anything. Coming right back. Stay with us.
I'm exactly 10 minutes too late.
Hey, this is... You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
A long time ago when the earth was green, there was more kinds of animals than you'd ever seen. They'd run around free when the earth was being formed, but the loveliest of them all was the unicorn. There was green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but sure as you're born, the loveliest of all was the unicorn. Now God seen some sinning, and it gave him pain, and he says, stand back, I'm going to make it rain. He says, hey brother Noah, I'll tell you what to do. Build me a floating zoo and take some of them green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but sure as you're born, don't you forget my unicorn.
You hear what God said there? Don't forget the unicorn, Noah.
Old Noah was there to answer the call. He finished up making the ark just as the rain started falling. He marched in the animals 2 by 2, and he called out as they went through. Hey Lord, I got you green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpty-backed camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but Lord, I'm so forlorn, I just can't see no unicorn.
There you go, the unicorn.
Then Noah looked out.
Oh, man, how good is that?
Them unicorns were hiding.
In case you didn't hear the refrain there, folks, green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpy-bunk camels and some chimpanzees, some cats and rats and elephants, but Lord, I'm so forlorn, I just can't see no unicorn. It changes a little bit, the refrain, the final line does. Oh, man, instructing Noah to be sure and take along a unicorn, right, Rhino? Well,
Feels like that should be a sobriety test.
That's a good point.
Can you rattle off the lyrics to this song?
Yeah, that's right.
Is it green alligator and a long-necked goose?
Oh, man, that's pretty cool. On the C Spire text line, guys and gals, love you all. Great, super job, and God bless. Please, it's Caroline, not Carolyn, the press secretary. Yeah, I think we got that. Is this Joan that sent us this from the 615? I don't think we've said that this morning, but I believe you and I have pronounced that correctly. It's Caroline Levitt, President Donald Trump's press secretary. But appreciate that. Gary and Tishomingo, I remember when it became a hit. I do too. Gerard, that dust-up probably just made the Senate dig in their heels even more, says Mose. It could be. You know, I think I, along with the majority of Mississippians, want to see our government work together and they'll to accomplish good things for the state. And, of course, I'm not trying to say whatsoever that our lawmakers don't. We just disagree. Certainly between the chambers, and it is a bit shocking, a bit striking that the gap is so significant in how to handle some of these affairs. I'm feeling like, Rhino, the big thing we're going to get is direct shipment of wine. And what was the other one we talked about this morning? The jacked up trucks. That's what I call them. Looks like we got something cooking there, right?
I thought we already dealt with that.
I did too. What am I
Carolina
missing?
squat?
Yeah, squatters. I don't know.
Oh, no, are you talking about squatters' rights? Like the people that just come into a building and, no, I don't have a lease.
That's right.
I just live here. Or even worse, the scammers that show up.
Yeah, that's exactly
where they're like,
right.
no, I don't have a deed, but yeah, you can buy this place. Just give me the money. And then they didn't actually own it.
Yeah. Then that's been going around the country. Of course, the Democrats have said, help yourself. Don't pay any attention to those owners of those properties. You just stay right there. Just help yourself. Make yourself at home. Oh, my gosh. That is the way they think. They really do. It's community property, right?
Well, nobody else was using it.
Oh, that's exactly right. Speaking of which...
Still doesn't make it yours to use, dipstick.
The president vowing unrelenting strikes on the Houthis over these ship attacks. Yemen-based Houthi militants. He says they're going to be unrelenting. The problem is they want to interfere with shipping in the Red Sea there. They're bad people. They don't care. I support the president in this respect. I'm not for boots on the ground, but I'm for using all the military might and technology this country has to take these menaces to global society out. That's all they are. They produce nothing productive for society. They're a hindrance to everyone's safety and prosperity. Squash them like a bug. You refuse to be good people. We don't need you anymore. We've tried.
If the only language they speak is violence, speak in their native tongue.
Man, out of here. That's what I think about that. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way. Then Dr. Dan Edney, the state health officer. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. J. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth Studio. Don't forget, it's Monday. That means it's Ricky Matthews with Super Talk Outdoors at 12:05 today. Right now, it's Dr. Dan Edney. He is the state health officer with the Mississippi Department of Health. Dr. Edney, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, Thanks for the invite.
Well, let's first talk about March being Colon Cancer Awareness Month. You and I participated in a little event to call attention to that a couple of weeks ago on the second floor in the rotunda of the Capitol, and just doing our best to impress upon our population how important it is, life-saving, honestly, to get screened. It's a fairly simple process, and as you will elaborate for us, colon cancer is one of the, if not the most curable form of cancer. And I've said so many times, being one who had colon cancer, I wouldn't call myself a survivor because my bout was fairly insignificant, as some can be. But it was a direct result of getting screened and finding what could be a worse outcome way before that occurred, and was essentially cured just by having a plain old colonoscopy, a plain old screening. Nobody in this country or our state should die of colon cancer, Dr. Edney.
I agree totally, and I appreciate your story very much, because you were going to die.
That's exactly right.
You were going to die of colon cancer. You would be dead of colon cancer today. First of all, if you had not had a really good, astute primary care physician who took really good care of you, and then you listened to the good advice you were given, and you went and had the colonoscopy done, that saved your life. Colonoscopy saved my life. Mine was purely screening, and it just emphasizes the fact that we lead the country in colon cancer deaths, and we shouldn't have hardly any at all if our folks, number one, had access to good medical homes for primary care, and then secondly, took advantage of the screening that's there for us. It's just one of those things in Mississippi we're dying of unnecessarily. And the wonderful thing about how we address colon cancer is we're trying to prevent it. So a colonoscopy is not meant to go in and look for colon cancer at your stage, although it does a good job doing that. It's actually meant to find it at my stage where I had those adenomatous polyps growing without any cancer, but they were high risk for turning malignant if they were just allowed to grow. And by having the colonoscopy done and have those polyps removed right there while I'm asleep for the colonoscopy, today I would be dead of colon cancer had I not taken advantage of that. And I'm just determined I'm going to die of something, but it won't be colon cancer like my daddy did. And my father's death was a miserable death, and it's just colon cancer deaths are not pretty at all.
Yeah.
And they're unnecessary. Most cancers, the screenings that we're doing, we're trying to find the cancer at an early stage. Mammography does not prevent breast cancer. It finds early stage breast cancer. Low dose CT scans for lung cancer. We're looking for early stage lung cancer to intervene when it is curable. But with colon cancer, we're trying to prevent it.
Yeah, by simply removing those growths, those precancerous polyps before they develop into cancer, you're essentially preventing contraction of cancer.
Absolutely. We put sunscreen on to prevent skin cancer. We look for early changes of skin lesions to get rid of them before they're deadly or even at the precancerous stage. Same thing with colon cancer. We're just looking at the skin of the colon. We're looking at the inside lining of the colon where those polyps grow, and that's where cancers arise 99+% of the time.
Yeah. And let's point this out as well. This is what I learned going through that experience, which, by the way, for the benefit of our audience, 2006 is when I had this. 2006. And here we are 19 years later, and it was actually February. I want to say I watched the Super Bowl from a hospital bed, as I recall, and folks took great care. But I've only produced one teeny tiny match head size polyp since then. Having all the colonoscopies, regular screening since then. And I remember the very first one I went to after I had the surgery, when the GI said, "Oh, we're ahead of this thing now. We're not worried about it." That was the words, and that's resonated in my head for 20 years.
Absolutely.
We're ahead of this thing now. We're not worried about this anymore. We finally think this is nothing. We know we're ahead of it. But as I recall, just kind of studying it on my own in my very amateur physician mode, it takes a while for a polyp to even be visible once one starts to form.
That's right.
To even a microscope. As I recall, like a couple of years, right. But perhaps 8 to 10 before it then becomes cancer.
Right, because it has to have time to grow and mature, and for those cells to keep replicating. And there are types of polyps that have no malignant potential. They're called hamartous polyps.
Okay.
And the GI specialist can tell the difference between those of virtually no malignant potential versus adenomatous polyps, like I produce, that have a high likelihood of developing those malignant cells like yours did, and like my father's did.
Yeah.
But if we can just stay ahead of it, which is why now the age has been dropped from 50 to 45,
right? Because
we were missing too many in that 5-year gap. That by dropping the age group down, we're catching more of those early stage adenomatous polyps and getting rid of them, so we have fewer 50-year-olds dying.
We, like I said, nobody should die.
That's right.
Of it, and we have marvelous technology and great access to healthcare professionals right here in our state that can ensure that. And
a frustrating thing is, number one, we do have too many folks without insurance, and so we, I've shared with you at the health department, we're screening for eligibility determination and helping folks enroll what they're eligible for, so that they have a chance to get their screenings and their primary care. But we have way too many Mississippians who have insurance not taking advantage of their screening opportunities, not doing their mammograms, pap smears, low dose CT scans if they have history of smoking, and I would put way at the top colonoscopy starting at age 45.
Do it, folks. All right, so I know you're always very passionate, not just about healthcare access and delivery in our state, but about the health of our state as well. That's your primary duty as a state health officer. Where do we stand these days? We're doing a little better, aren't we?
We are better than we were, and with public health, that's always a win. So when I took office not quite 3 years ago, we were scoring very low across the board with our population health outcomes, and we were scoring really lower than 50th. Because there was territories that were getting ahead of us. And I was really proud this year with our America's Health Rankings that we moved from below 50th up to 49th. Now, only Mississippians would understand the importance of being 49th instead of 50th or 51st, 52nd. Because what that means, I don't care whether we're last or not. I care about people dying and people being unhealthy. And the fact that we moved up in the rankings is objective evidence that things are a bit better in terms of population health. We've moved from 50th to 44th in maternal death. And that's really important. We're still 50th in infant mortality, but our numbers continue to drop. And we're working really hard. We're rolling out a new system of care statewide that relates to high-risk perinatal that we think will salvage a lot of the deaths of the under 28 days infant. A lot of those are premature, and we have way too many. We have about 85 deaths a year in that under 1 month of age. We really think we can impact that by getting babies born closer to NICUs and getting right into NICUs. We think we can knock that number down significantly. We don't know exactly how much, but I'm praying we can cut that number in half. And as we keep chipping away, my goal is for us not to get off the bottom, but to get off the radar, so that when people in the country are talking about maternal infant death and how it applies to Mississippi, that they're talking about how we made it better. And we are making it better, but we got more work to do. So things are better, still lots of opportunity.
If you can hang around, we can continue the discussion. I want to find out how the legislative session went. It's still going on, but I think most stuff related to health care has already been deliberated, and want to get your take on that. We've got Dr. Dan Edney, the state health officer, in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's the great Tom Petty bumps us into this segment. We're visiting with Dr. Dan Edney. He is the state health officer for Mississippi with the Mississippi Department of Health. So give us an update on the legislative session from your perspective, Dr. Edney.
Another day closer to being finished. So
it's true.
It's been good for public health in general and the Department of Health, and specifically, basically, we had two non-financial bills that both have performed well. One was recognizing community health workers as a parahealth professional to help us in public health with our high-risk, vulnerable populations. It's a low-cost employee that is part of the community, enmeshed in the community, and helps us close loops with outcomes like syphilis and diabetes and hypertension and HIV care, those things. And it really low-cost way to improve outcomes that other states have demonstrated. Real proud to get that across the finish line. And then the Public Health Trust I had shared with you a little bit last time.
Yeah.
Very, very proud of that clearing the Senate and the House. Just an opportunity to bring private sector resources in for public health programming, trying to reduce our need for state tax dollars, and just having opportunities to have alternate funding pathways away from the state general fund, just to be less of a burden on the general fund, but also have sustainable, predictable funding that's not really predicated on how a state budget year or a federal budget year is looking. And very, very proud to get that done. I think we'll only be like one of 6 states to have one.
Wow. What are you watching at the federal level? It seems like cutting spending is in vogue, and I feel like that the outcome of the spending cuts are somewhere between the fear-mongering we're getting from the Democrats, especially with respect to health in particular, talking about Medicare and Medicaid. More specifically, those are the 2 big health programs sponsored by the government. Veterans Affairs as well would be part of that. Subsidies in the Affordable Care Act exchange is another big statutory funding area. What are you guys preparing for here locally or here at the state level with the Department of Health with respect to the possibility of losing some federal dollars?
Well, just understanding is necessary. The federal budget is out of control, has to be reined in. As a conservative Mississippian who pays a lot of federal tax dollars every year, I get that. I do appreciate the opportunity to have a little bit more time to prepare for it. We've been preparing for it during my tenure because I really was expecting it on the state side first before federal, but here we are. I do think the CDC is going to undergo some reform, which most of the state health officers in the Southeast are supportive of, that the CDC can do a better job in terms of administrating public health funds. I remind folks that 80% of the funding of the CDC flows out to the states, but they are very controlling of those dollars. And I see great success in what we've had with our block grant funding, like maternal child health block grant, preventive health block grant, public health infrastructure block grant, where that decision making is pushed out to the states. Because I guarantee you, we at the Department of Health know what Mississippians need in terms of population health and programming much more than Atlanta, and certainly much more than Washington. And so pushing that decision making more out to the states, I think, will be much more cost effective and more impactful, for the citizens of Mississippi. When I was in Washington last week, and I don't go up there seeking anything for the Department of Health. I'm going up as state health officer to have conversations about, here is a laundry list of concerns I have that impact healthcare infrastructure for the state, and then serve as a trusted resource for them, and things like rural hospital issues, or how CMS is dealing with the hospitals in the state, nursing home access, Medicaid funding, which is important to the Department of Health, but it's critically important to the healthcare economy in Mississippi. And to talk about those things, to talk about public health funding, and I just am really frustrated with this feast or famine approach that we've been taking for too long, that we cut public health funding to the bone until there's a crisis, and then we flood public health with way too much money than can be responsibly spent in a short amount of time, where we need to be looking at sustainable, reasonable funding of public health with upticks, not at the time of a public health crisis, but not like the COVID wash that we got. Just dumping billions of dollars into a system that can't handle it was not wise. And we spent a lot of time during COVID trying to catch up with the public health infrastructure in Mississippi. We're better than we were, but now if we're going to cut way, way back, then it's just going to be that same cycle again. And there will be another challenge that they'll dump a lot of money into. And I would rather they just have sustainable, reasonable funding on an ongoing basis with decision making at the state level with accountability and guardrails. And then I think you'll see a lot less waste, a lot more efficiency.
I think back on that, and I think you're so spot on with your analysis, Dr. Edney, but I think back on that, as you well know, the federal government just dropped billions of dollars out of trillions, actually, out of helicopters. A lot of that went to the healthcare industry, and it was designed to offset what was thought to be a dramatic increase in cost just because of dealing with COVID. But one of the things we have in the wake of that is just significant healthcare inflation. It especially did it not affect wages for certain healthcare professional positions that are in demand.
Absolutely.
Because they were in such demand then that everybody was willing to pay crazy amounts of money to get them on staff or to provide services. We really hadn't returned to that level pre-COVID, have we?
No, I know certainly 2020 through 2023, we were looking at inflation rates in the healthcare sector of about 20%.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That high.
And it was all wages. And there was some supply chain issues.
Yeah, but it's mainly wages.
It was mainly wages, and those wages have settled down some, but nothing like pre-COVID. And we have really workforce shortage challenges in nursing, especially still with physicians, but really across the board, respiratory therapy, everything, which puts upward pressure on wages. So the healthcare inflation rate is not 20% anymore, but it is way above 2.9%.
Yeah.
And I have to remind our appropriators, we are at the health department, we are healthcare. I run a healthcare system statewide for public health. We run clinics all over the state, so that inflation rate hits us. And this year I basically asked for level funding because I had some other opportunities to utilize I didn't want to use tax dollars for until I had consumed these other resources. But level funding is really at least a 10% cut.
Yeah. We were talking offline about the prospect of the federal government as they dig through another budget process. You got a little respite from that for at least 6 months where we know everything stays the same, no big major upheaval to federal funding. Pockets of it here or there, of course, that I know that are affecting the healthcare industry and in your organization. But the prospect of, let's say, cutting the federal dollars Mississippi receives to match its part of Medicaid, and we receive the highest because we have the lowest per capita income, that's how it's calculated, that could have a significant impact on the healthcare industry in the state, could it not?
Absolutely, and not just healthcare, but to the economy of Mississippi. Those Medicaid dollars flow out all throughout our economy and turn over 7 times like every other dollar. Those dollars are desperately needed for our health economy, but for the overall economy. And healthcare is utterly dependent on Medicare and Medicaid dollars. Can't survive without it.
Well, especially in a state where we have, 750,000 on Medicaid in our state. Almost a third of our state's on Medicaid.
Right, and then you add Medicare on top of that, and the significant majority of the population is on a combination of Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah, more so than commercial coverage,
Absolutely.
which reimburses at
I want to say
rate.
70%.
I think that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it's kind of a toxic elixir, if you will, for the healthcare industry. Something we need to be aware of.
Yeah, that federal dependency is dangerous.
Totally agree. Appreciate you coming in,
Thank
Dr.
you,
Edney.
buddy. I
Always
appreciate
good to see
you.
Yes, sir. Dr. Dan Edney, the state health officer, has been our guest on Middays. We're coming right back. Half an hour remaining. Stay with us.
Whiskey flew at him. He ducked and landing on the bed. The whiskey scatters over Tim. Be daddy revives and see how he rises. Tim Finnegan rising in the bed. Saying 20 hour whiskey around like blazes. Be the toilet and jaded, do you think I'm dead? Whack pull it down, you dance to your hand around the floor, you the other skin. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's way. How would you now want game ball?
Hey, this is
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
While in the merry month of May, now from me home I started, left the girls at home and nearly broken heart, saluted father dear, kissed me darling mother, drank a pint of beer, me grief and tears are smothered enough to reap the corn, leave where I was born, caught a stout black torn to banish ghosts and goblins, brand new pair of brogues to rat the love of the bogs, frighten all the dogs on the rocky road to Dublin, 1 2 3 4 5, hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road and all the ways to Dublin, whack for Lally-Ra. In Mullingar the blight arrested limb so weary, started by daylight this morning bright and nearly took a drop of the pure, keep me heart from sinking, that's the paddy's cure. When Aries up for drinking to see the lassies smile, laughing all the while at me curious style, to set your heart a bubbling, asked me was I hired, wages I required, till I was almost tired of the rocky road to Dublin, 1 2 3.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. Thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate Dr. Dan Edney, the State Health Officer, for coming in the Element Well studio. So before I get back to the state stuff, just got to pass on to you that it was Chuck Schumer that received lots of backlash from his own party. They were mad about him caving in, joining Republicans in passing the CR. You know what I don't understand, Rhino, is this effectively continues Biden-era spending. It's what his continuing resolution does, hence the term continuing to describe such measures. And your old buddy Bernie Sanders, he's a bit irate about it, and he goes to his social media world to say that this is going to take away health care for seniors and food for those in need and extend tax cuts to billionaires.
The usual pablum.
Right, exactly. So he was apoplectic, shall we say, about it. And I don't get where he's coming from. Now, it is true that they were able to incorporate a slight increase to defense and a slight decrease to non-defense. But other than that, that's discretionary spending. What the heck's he talking about? This doesn't change any of that. It's Biden-era spending. What is he talking about? Now, if he wants to start arguing about and pointing out the possible ramifications of the budget resolution, the framework passed by the House that now they're going to cobble out in respective committees, that's different. But as far as this bill, he did refer to this bill. That's what he was talking about, which continues things as is. Over there in the House, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, he too pretty upset when asked in a press conference what he thought. You've seen this, what he thought about needing new leadership in the Senate. Because the Senate leadership, that would be Chuck Schumer, sided with Republicans in passing the continuing resolution and thus avoiding a government shutdown. The response from the minority leader in the House was, next question. He kind of threw him under the bus there, didn't he? He didn't come to his defense. He didn't criticize him. He kind of left it up to your imagination. Next question. I would say silence in that case is agreement that new leadership is needed over there in the Senate. That is what the House Minority Leader is certainly implying. Now, you've seen Bernie's out doing town halls, Rhino. Have you seen what's on the front of his little podium there? Stop the oligarchs or something like that. I know it's got oligarchs in it. That's like their favorite word these days. And we went from billionaires to oligarchs. So,
that's because they got tired of people pointing out that a lot of their
it's true.
biggest donors are some of the biggest billionaires in the world.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, he says that this continuing resolution is a savage war against working families. It's Biden spending. What in the heck is he talking about? The elderly, children, the sick, and the poor in order to lay the groundwork for massive tax breaks for the billionaire class. What is he talking about, man? He doesn't know. It's just more political grandstanding crap.
He hadn't been right since the doctor smacked his butt so he could scream and make his mama feel better.
On the C Spire text line, Deb in Wesson says, one of my friends just went through 10 rounds of chemo. Just chemo only totaled $130,000. They didn't include doctors, testing, etc. Ridiculous. CEOs are multimillionaires at the expense of others suffering. They still claim prices are high because of development of drugs. The CEO is now deceased. Wish our Attorney General would investigate what has been happening for decades. This is still going on long after company expenses were recouped. Well, that sounds to me like, all due respect there, Deb, what do you want? The government to step in and control pricing of everything in healthcare? Because you know what? That's what they do in England. That's what they do in Canada and Spain. I'm going to ask you again, Rhino, what are the healthcare outcomes in those countries? And more specifically, what's just the status of healthcare in those countries?
Well, I mean, say you broke your arm in England. You could go to the doctor's office and they'll say, yeah, you got a broken arm. You need an x-ray so we can make sure to set it properly. We'll schedule that x-ray in about 8 weeks. Well, my arm's going to be healed by then. Hopefully not improperly, because we got to get the x-ray, and that'll be in 8 weeks. Or you go somewhere like Canada, where if you're having to deal with chemotherapy, if the bean counters up there say, well, it looks like the price of chemotherapy is less than the amount of tax dollars we'll get from you before you die, how about we offer you assisted suicide?
Ah, okay. Sounds like a really crappy deal. So I hear your frustration, Deb, and I know, and it sounds crazy and it's expensive, and I get it. But should we lodge the same complaint about ChatGPT and other fee-based artificial intelligence tools, which aren't many right now? But and here's where I'm going with that. NVIDIA made twice as much last year on 10% of the revenue as the entire health insurance industry did. One company. Now, I'm not defending health insurers. That's not the point here. I'm just pointing out the math. That's all I'm doing. And I know we all are struggling, and we all complain, rightfully so, about the high cost of health care. But it's not, if you took all the profit out of it, it doesn't make that much difference. That's the point I'm making. The insurer profits about 1%. By the way, pharmaceutical company profit about 2% of the entire healthcare industry. Nobody says a whole lot about them doctors making 7 figures, and I'm for them making 7 figures. You know why? Because the market says that's what you're worth. When the market says, hey, there's a bunch of you out here, I don't need to pay you 7 figures, I'm going to pay you $500,000 instead of $1 million, that's the way it ought to work. So that's the question is, what do you want? The government to step in? Because I think the story I've read, or the country I've read the most about is Spain. I don't know if you've ever looked into that from a healthcare perspective, but it's like, if you're a doctor, you make $75,000 a year. It don't matter what you're a doctor of, because you work for the government. Now, the wealthy people in Spain, they don't have to deal with that, because they can afford to go to the doctors that make $1 million a year. But nobody else can. Right? That's the way it works.
Yeah, because in that instance, it's not like the wealthy people go to the doctor's office or the hospital. No, they go to some swanky hotel room or a chateau in the countryside and get their health care there, because either that's where the doctor lives or that's where the doctor's working, but the doctor's not working for the government. He's working for you on a contract.
And Deb says not control pricing, but price gouging. All due respect, Deb, that's exactly what Kamala Harris and the Democrats were saying about groceries. And when asked, well, where's gouging going on? Just silence. So define price gouging, because I can. There is a legal, you know about that, Rhino, definition, and it basically says under emergency circumstances, if you take advantage of that by raising your price beyond what is the normal market price, that doesn't affect, doesn't go into effect, or doesn't, what am I trying to say? Continue is the best way to say it. During an emergency, because you've got shortages and excess demand, well, that's different. So the fact that pharmaceutical companies and doctors and insurance companies are making a profit, that's not price gouging. Do you believe Apple's price gouging? They only made $120 billion last year on sales of 400. There's no company in the healthcare industry that remotely comes close to that percent net income. Coming back.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I'm a cancer survivor on the C Spire text line. I have Medicare and a supplement. I'm out payment for supplements, but I was out very little for my treatment and hospital stay, and all I came in contact with in the healthcare system were some of the best. Appreciate that, you sending that on. Seems like it comes down to I like my iPhone, but not my medical care, says Dan in Hattiesburg. Do health insurers not reduce their profits by giving larger bonuses to employees? Well, let's think about that for a second. What am I trying to say here? The machinations, how about that? That a company's management has to go through to balance. I mean, this is all part of the free market, guys, that to balance compensation with revenue, all expenses, besides just compensation, but compensation is what we're talking about here, with the need for revenue and profit to appease investors and stockholders when you're a public company. And even if you're a private company, it's not in your best interest to just pay all your profit out in the form of an expense, whether it's paying out to your people or not, because that pretty much would make you unviable for insurance, for financial needs, financial services, and the same's true with a public company. Man, that's the tightrope they're walking on a daily basis, Rhino, that the average person doesn't get, that a CEO has to deal with this. I got to make sure we pay people enough so that they're happy and they perform well. Sure, any good company is going to have some sort of variable compensation component, some sort of bonus structure to incentivize people to perform well. It returns benefit and value to the company. But you have to pay for that in the form of bonuses. But not so much that you wipe out all your profit, because then your shareholders and your lenders and bonding companies and other stakeholders say, wait a second, you're not profitable? We're out. And then the company folds. So, no, they're not doing anything that any other company doesn't do to balance those needs. The needs between, got to make sure we take care of our people, and we've also got to produce a reasonable profit. I'm simply pointing out that the health insurance industry is not a profitable industry. It's terrible, as a matter of fact. It's not very profitable. I'm not defending insurance companies. I'm just doing the math. You're welcome to look it up. You look up the top 5 insurers in this country that account for about 85% of the commercial coverage, their aggregate net profit is about $45 billion a year, with United Health Insurance being the top at 20. Just for argument's sake, NVIDIA made $21 billion last quarter. They made half as much as the whole dang health insurance company industry did last year. I mean, I don't even. You may say that's not a valid comparison, but I would differ with you because I don't see people out there arguing about the price of Blackwell chips. Have you, Rhino? Have you seen anybody complain about the price of NVIDIA's chips? I don't.
I mean, if you're trying to get your hands on them.
That's true, because they're in such demand. But I mean, do people generally go to social media and compare and complain about the cost of iPhones, for example, given that Apple's the most profitable company on the planet?
Not unless they want to get their hands on one and can't.
Right. But everybody complains about health insurance. That's the only point I'm making. And I'm not saying you're wrong for complaining. Don't get me wrong there. Don't misinterpret my point here, which is just a mathematical. That's all I'm making here. My personal belief is, to the chemotherapy example, my personal belief is human innovation continues to drive new treatments, new drugs, new therapies, new procedures that are extending life, that are improving the quality of life and healthcare outcomes. But guess what? They all cost money. We all want it, but we can't afford it. And it's not like it was. A lot of people say, well, gee, back in the 50s, you just did this, that, and the other. Well, yeah, you just died of stuff like that.
Yeah, at one point in time, the treatment for cancer was a prescription for laudanum, which was basically liquor mixed with morphine and codeine.
Sure, that's cheap, but you're going to die. Whereas today, you think about...
And eventually the laudanum doesn't cut it anymore.
That's true. You think about today, all the technology, all the procedures, all the drugs, all the therapies that we have. Problem is they cost money. So we're sort of like outstripping our ability to pay for all the innovation. That's why we need, and I think we're on the cusp of it, new innovation, new drugs, new therapies, new treatments, new procedures that will actually drive the cost curve down because they're preventative in nature. Just talking to Dr. Edney earlier, you know this, Rhino, if the folks that contracted colon cancer and God bless them, ended up succumbing to the disease, how expensive that is and how brutal a way to perish that is. If they'd have just gotten screened, we could have avoided that, but ultimately we all end up paying for that. That's the way it works. And not to mention the human side of it. Folks, we're out of here today. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.